Do you remember your first day of school? That first day of kindergarten? Do you remember the excitement, maybe even the fear you felt as you left the safety and the surety of your home and you embarked on this brave new adventure of stepping into this vast, unknown world of wonder and limitless potential? If you're anything like me, you probably don't. And it's because that vision you had as a child of what school meant has probably been replaced over the years with something else. See, for most of us, school very quickly transforms from this place of learning and exploration and growth, and it simply becomes a ladder to be climbed. If you want to move forward, or at least up in life, then you need to go to school and you need to study hard so you can get good grades. And this is going to allow you to go on to the next grade, and then the next, and the next. And one day you're going to look up, and if you played the game right, you'll be headed off to college. And because you studied so hard and you were such a great student, the world tells you you're going to get a great job and that it's going to take care of you. It's going to pay you what you deserve, and you're going to get to live the life of your dreams. Now, most people, they go through their entire life never stopping to question this until one day they get to the very end of their road when they're too worn out and tired to change, and they realize for the first time ever that their life had not turned out how they'd been promised, that they had been lied to. Now, the world tells us many lies when we're young. Lies about Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, or the Tooth Fairy. But with time, maturity, we come to see these for what they are. They're so obvious in hindsight, but when you're young, you believe them with absolute certainty. And then one day everything changes. The wool is stripped away from your eyes and you see the world just a little more clearly as it truly is. But here's the thing. There are countless other lies that we have all been told. Lies about the world and how it works. Lies about you and what you're capable of. Lies about everything. And the worst part is, most of us never grow out of these lies until it's too late. Now, I don't want that for you. So here are 5 lies you're told about the world that you cannot afford to believe if you want to achieve your greatness. The first is what I call the focus lie. When I was 6 years old, my teachers went to my mom and said, "We think there's something wrong with Anthony." Now, I don't know if that was the first time anybody has ever said this about me, but I can assure you it wouldn't be the last. But on that particular occasion, it ended with me getting diagnosed for the first time with ADHD. Suddenly, I had an excuse for being different, for not being able to sit still or face forward or to focus. But not to worry, the doctor said. We have a solution, a way to make Anthony so he isn't so disruptive, a way for him to fit in, a way for him to function normally in the world. So they put me on Ritalin. And I spent the next 10 years feeling trapped inside my body and inside my mind. But they told me that this was a necessary evil, that it was better than the alternative, because without that drug, I would be bouncing off the wall, unable to control myself, unable to focus, unable to fit in. And I believed all of that to be true. But when I was 16 and my dad gave me the choice of going off that drug, I stopped taking Ritalin because I didn't want to feel trapped anymore, trapped inside of myself. Even if it meant that I would never be able to focus or fit in. I just wanted to feel free again. Now, what I didn't realize at the time was that I was simply trading one prison for another. I was now a 16-year-old kid with severe ADHD, and I had no skills, no systems, no resources for managing my chaotic mind, for pointing my potential in a useful direction. And even worse, I was a kid who believed what all the adults in his life had told him, that I had an attention deficit disorder. And no matter what I tried, it would always be there. And I struggled. I struggled for the next 10 years of my life because I bought into the focus lie. And something I've come to realize along the way is that I'm not the only one buying into this lie. In fact, whether you have ADHD or not, in my experience, most people struggle with this lie to some degree. It's the lie that says you have a focus problem. And this lie is so pervasive that most of us just accept it at face value. We accept that we're easily distracted by notifications on our phone, that we struggle with procrastination and staying on task. But here's the thing. You don't have a focus problem. You have a focus management problem. And I realized this for myself one day when I looked up after having played 8 straight hours of Halo. It suddenly dawned on me that all those people who told me I couldn't focus, they were dead wrong. I could focus just fine. The problem is simply that my brain is a dopamine-seeking missile on a constant search for easy entertainment. And realizing this, it changed how I approached the problem, and that has made all the difference. See, I define focus as the ability to resist distractions, which is why I tend to think of focus like a muscle, and that the solution is generally just to try harder. And this does work, but only up to a point, because eventually your willpower is going to wear off. And what I found is that the better solution is to simply design your environment in a way that makes it less likely for distractions to appear in the first place. And once I figured that out, I stopped worrying so much about being focused. And instead, I put my energy into cultivating environments and routines that were conducive to focus. Now, I laid out my entire focus management system in a video called This Is Why You Can't Focus. I'll drop a link for it down below, and I highly recommend you go check it out after you finish this video, because since I adopted that system, not only has my productivity skyrocketed, but I found so much more peace of mind. Let me just say this, peace of mind is a priceless thing. Unfortunately, it's constantly being threatened because of the second lie the world tells us, which is the lie of enough. Listen, humans are the ultimate adaptation machine. We have the ability to adapt to pretty much whatever the universe throws at us. And this served our ancestors incredibly well because the universe was constantly throwing things at them that were trying to kill them. So back then, constant adaptation was a survival mechanism. And it's the one that enabled us to climb to the top of the animal kingdom. So huzzah, yay humans. Unfortunately, we humans, we adopted a bit too well, and we more or less solved for the problem of survival. I'm guessing you don't spend much time every day worrying about how you're gonna avoid dying, right? And yet, this is pretty much the only thing our ancestors ever thought about. So modern man now has a unique problem. It's no longer enough for us to simply survive. We want to thrive. It's towards that goal that we turn our incredible powers of adaptation. So we seek that promotion so we can make more money and upgrade our car and move into that nicer house and go on those nice vacations. And all along the way, we tell ourselves, I'll be happy when I get to my goal. But the truth is, as soon as you reach the goal, your adaptation machine kicks in and you move the goalpost on yourself. Now, in my experience, the gap between where you are now and where you're trying to get, it never actually shrinks. And these goals, which we convince ourselves will make us happier, they don't ultimately move the needle. This is called the hedonic treadmill, which is a simple principle that says we humans have a relatively stable baseline of happiness that's largely unaffected in the long term by external accomplishments. So no, that new car, that new house, that fancy watch, it's not gonna make you any happier. Now here's the real frustrating part. Despite the fact that we know we're on this treadmill, we can't actually get off of it. There is no such thing as enough. We humans are just constantly seeking more and better, but this doesn't have to be a bad thing. See, while you can't get off the treadmill, you can change what you're walking towards. In my experience, there's only one thing worth walking towards in life, and it's not happiness, it's not status, it's not power, it's purpose. Find the things in this life that fill you with a sense of purpose, and then go ahead and crank up that treadmill, because that is something worth pursuing, even if you never catch it. All right, here's the next lie we're told about the world. It's the consumer lie. The world is on a quest to make everything cheaper, quicker, and more convenient. Our lives are filled with hypercaloric food and hyper-stimulating entertainment that's delivered to us in an instant. And it's all working to lull us into this perpetual state of satiation. And yet, despite lives that are so full, many of us have never felt so empty, so unfulfilled. Now, I think fulfillment is one of the most interesting words in the English language. The word fulfillment implies that there's a hole inside of us, something that's missing. And so each of us goes on our own personal quest to fill this hole. But along the way, many of us go astray because we get tricked by the world that's telling us that the solution, the way to fill this hole inside of us, is with stuff. Go on, buy that fancy car. You deserve it. Binge on Netflix. You earned it. Indulge in that dessert, you'll feel better. So we consume more and more and more, and then we wonder why we feel so empty. Here's the truth. You will never feel so empty as you do when you chase cheap dopamine. Porn, junk food, television, these things are designed to lull you into a state of complacent mediocrity by encouraging mindless, passive consumption. Listen, there is no such thing as cheap dopamine. You just don't understand the price you're actually paying. The true price of passively consuming life is the person you could have become, the person you could have created. And that right there is the secret to filling that hole inside of you. See, you can't consume your way to fulfillment. It can only be created. Now, I don't know what your particular act of creation is. Maybe you're a writer, a painter, a sculptor, an athlete, or a leader of some sort. There's all sorts of ways to use your powers of creation. But you know when you're doing it because you're bringing into the world something that could not have existed without you. It's born from a spark deep inside of you, and I believe it is our highest calling in this life to nurture that spark and, when possible, to share it with the world. Now I get it, that's a grandiose way of thinking about things, but it motivates me to take action, and perhaps it'll do the same for you, because here's the brutal truth. The act of creation is almost always difficult. And this is why I always say I hate writing, but I love having written. The process of creating something can be painstaking and tedious and boring and frustrating, but if you persist, you'll slip into this magical state of consciousness called flow, where you lose sense of time and self, and you become one with the universe and the activity you're engaged with in that moment. Psychologists describe flow as one of the most pleasurable states we humans can experience. And the beauty is, you can experience this state every single day. But here's the catch. It can't be bought on Amazon and delivered the next day. It has to be earned. It has to be created. So I encourage you, consume less and create more. Now, something that's going to help you in that pursuit is by overcoming the next lie we're told about the world, which is the thinking lie. Most of us are going to have around 70,000 thoughts on any given day. But despite the sheer volume of thoughts flying through our heads at any given moment, very few people truly understand how to think in a way that leads to genuine insight or understanding on a topic. Now, the lie we tell ourselves is that we know more about things than we really do. This is why everybody and their mother has an opinion on practically every topic, and yet when you really probe deeper, you realize most people don't have a clue what they're talking about. And here's the craziest part, they don't even realize it. The truth is, most people don't know how to focus their chaotic mind's energy in a useful direction. The result? Motion without progress. Listen, 70,000 thoughts in a day is a lot of motion, but because the vast majority of those thoughts are just the same dozen or so things playing over and over and over again on an endless loop in our minds, we don't actually make any progress in improving the quality of our thoughts. The way to change that starts by understanding a simple concept that I call thinking loops. See, there's two types of thinking loops. The first is just an endless loop where the same thought goes around and around and around, but doesn't ever really lead anywhere. This is the majority of the thoughts that you're going to have on any given day. But there's a second type of thinking loop, which I call a thinking spiral. This is where that thought goes around and around, but on each revolution, you gain a little more insight or clarity, and so the loop spirals upward, which leads to higher and higher levels of perspective. So here's the truth. Spiraling your thoughts upward is really difficult if you're just trying to hold it all in your head. And the reason for this is because your monkey brain is constantly trying to run off on tangents that distract us from making any forward progress on the thought we're trying to actually wrestle with. Not only that, but when you try to hold a thought in your mind to really wrestle with it, you're forced to rely on your working memory, which is just another word for your short-term memory. And your working memory has one really big glaring limitation. It can only hold around 7 things at a time, which isn't a lot to work with when you're trying to actually think through complicated problems. This is why mental models are so powerful. They provide a simple framework or pattern that you can use to overlay from one domain onto another. This creates a really useful mental shortcut when trying to think through complicated topics. Truly, I noticed a massive improvement in the quality of my own thoughts when I started regularly using mental models. Now, if you want to learn 5 mental models which have had a really massive impact on my business and my life, check out the video I did called The Art of Thinking Strategically. I'll drop a link below. Now, here's the thing. Mental models are helpful, but they're only going to get you so far. Sometimes you just got to think more deeply on a topic, and for that, most people really don't have a clue where to start. And so they perseverate endlessly in a thinking loop going nowhere. If you ever find yourself cycling through a thinking loop, not feeling like you're making progress towards an actual helpful insight, you need to try something different. For me, the absolute best way to think deeply on a topic is through writing. Writing is the process by which we force the chaotic jumble of ephemeral thoughts cycling through our minds. We force it out through our fingertips, our pen into a piece of paper or onto the computer screen. Writing is thought made physical. And the beauty of this is that once you've brain dumped your thoughts onto the page, you can finally see the holes and the weaknesses in your reasoning. And now you can start wrestling with the full breadth of the topic because you don't have to worry about losing your train of thought when the monkey mind springs up and tries to take over. And you don't have to worry about forgetting something when your working memory gets full. And because it's all just right there in front of you and you can pick up where you left off and keep pushing the mental ball forward, you actually make progress. This is why all the best and most clear thinkers I've ever known are great writers. This isn't a coincidence. If you learn how to write and therefore think, your life is going to start to improve. People are going to treat you differently. You're going to move through life with a calm and poise, and the quality of your results is going to improve because the quality of your actions is ultimately determined by the quality of your thoughts. And this is ultimately going to lead you to a place where you suddenly take notice of our 5th and final lie the world is trying to tell you. The lie of the exceptional. The world is run by idiots who work very hard to convince you that they are remarkable, that they have some innate and God-given ability which enables them to do things we mere mortals could never dream of. And yet, if you've ever had the opportunity to sit down with a politician who runs a country or a billionaire running an international conglomerate, you've likely had a very peculiar realization, or at least I did after meeting with my first billionaire a few years back. It was this: holy shit, this guy didn't have a clue what he was doing. He was just too stupid to quit. Now, I'm not saying that to minimize his accomplishments, and I'm not suggesting that the people in positions of power haven't done something incredible by getting to where they are. But it's important to understand that these people, they're flawed humans, just like you and me, and that in most cases, their success is simply the result of discipline, hard work, and a whole lot of luck. Now, a lot of people will hear that last part about luck and use that as an excuse for why they aren't where they want to be in life. But I've discovered something pretty interesting after having met thousands of successful people, and it's this: most of them got lucky by design, which is a really crazy concept that I unpacked in another video called Hard Work Won't Make You Rich. This will. I'll drop another link for that in the description, so go check that out too. Now, before you get out of here, I've got one last thing I want to say about this lie of the exceptional. Once you realize that there's really nothing all that special about the people we tend to put up on pedestals, you realize something else that I think a lot of us who are trying to move towards our greatness struggle with. That is the imposter syndrome. Many of us stop ourselves from even getting in the game because we don't believe we belong. But the truth is, none of us belong. We're all just making it up as we go. But here's the thing: if you don't ever feel like an imposter, it's probably because you stopped growing. You stopped reaching for goals beyond your current capacity, stopped stepping into rooms with people operating just beyond your level. If you don't ever want to feel like an imposter, then you simply have to stop striving. But in my book, that cure for imposter syndrome is worse than the disease. So please don't buy into this lie the world would have you believe, that you don't belong here. You do. Now go make your mark.